Hi, everybody. Welcome to my channel, Numbers with Nora. This is a math tutoring channel that will help you with all your math needs and any homework questions or anything like that. So for this particular video, we're going to be doing geometry. This is just homework help from one of my 2Ds. I believe it's chapter 3.5, and it's equations of parallel and perpendicular lines. All right, so let's get to it. Sorry if it might be a little blurry. I sat there and took a screenshot of my 2D's homework. All right, so let's start with the first one. This first one, we're going to be dealing with creating lines. So always annotate so you understand what they're asking you. So this one says, write the equation of the line that's parallel to the graph of y equals 1/2 x plus 6, and whose y-intercept, that's when our x is 0, is -2. So for this one, remember, parallel lines means the same slope, okay? And our y-intercept is whenever x is 0. So like if I wanted to write it as a point, 0, -2. Usually we would use the formula, and some of the questions below, we're going to sit there and use it. But use the point slope formula. But for this one, since they give us our y-intercept, there's no need to use that. So for this one, I know that the slope is going to be the same. So I would have y equals the slope here is my coefficient for my x, 1/2. That just stays the same because their lines are parallel. And then -2. And this is our formula, y equals mx plus b, our slope-intercept form, where m is my slope and b is my y-intercept. And that's the form that we just wrote it in. So the answer for this one would be y equals 1/2 -2. All right, let's go on to the next one. For 2, same thing, write an equation of a line that is parallel to the graph of y equals -4x minus 9 and has the y-intercept of 3. All right, again, since they give us our y-intercept, we don't have to use point slope form. So since our lines are parallel, that means we have the same slope. Okay, so my line y equals -4x. And we listen to the sign of our y-intercept, and this will be +3. That's our answer for that one. Let's go on ahead to number 3. Again, write the equation of a line that is parallel to the graph of 3x minus y equals 5, and whose y-intercept is 0, -4. So again, for this one, it's not in our y equals mx plus b form or slope-intercept form. So we want to sit there and solve and isolate our y so it is in that form. All right. So the first step for here, for isolating our y, we can subtract 3 from both sides. When we subtract 3 from both sides, we're simply going to get -y equals -3x plus 5. And then we can simply divide all of my terms by -1 because we want our y to be totally isolated, just by itself. So when I divide everything by -1, I'll simply get y equals negative divided by a negative gives me a positive 3x minus 5. Now that I have it in intercept form, I can sit there and identify my slope very easily. My slope here is 3. And since it's parallel, we know our slope is going to be the same. And then they give me my y-intercept, which is my b, -7. All right. Awesome. Let's go down to number 4. This one, write the equation of the line that is parallel. Again, we're using parallel, remember, same slope, to the graph of 2x plus 5 equal, or 2x plus y equals 5, and whose y-intercept, they give us our y-intercept, is 0, 4. So again, the first thing, we want this in y-intercept form, or y equals mx plus b, slope-intercept form, my apologies. And so we want to solve for our y. So that means we're going to subtract this 2x from both sides so I can isolate my y. So I would have y equals, we're subtracting that 2x from both sides, and then plus 5. Okay. Now this way I can identify my slope. My slope is -2. Since we're dealing with parallel, we know my slope is going to be the same. So I have y equals -2x. And then my y-intercept plus 4. All right. Let's continue. These instructions are a little bit different. So this one, they want us to write the slope-intercept form, right? Remember, that's y equals mx plus b. It has to be in that form where my y is isolated. I have my slope, my x, and I have my y-intercept as b. Has to be in that form. Of the equation of the line that passes through the given point and is parallel, same slope, to the graph of each equation. So this is where we have to use a different formula. And I'm going to use this formula, which is called the point slope formula. And I'll write it right here for you guys. So it's y minus, everything in black is part of the formula. Everything that I write in purple, y sub 1, is going to be things that we substitute into this formula. All right. Equals m. M is our slope. Oop, my apologies. We substitute in our slope. M. And then we put in parentheses x. Notice those minuses are black, so those minuses are part of our formula, and we have to account for that. And we have x sub 1. So that's going to be our point slope formula that we're going to use to sit there and find the lines that pass through our point and have parallel, so the same slope as the lines given. So let's go ahead and start with number 5. For this one, I like to identify my slope right off the bat. I know my slope is going to be the same because they are parallel. That's going to be m. My slope here is my coefficient of my x. It's just 1. Right? And we have to pass through this point. Okay? So I'm going to have this as my y sub, or my x sub 1. Sorry, it's a hideous x. Let me rewrite that. This is my x sub 1, my 3. My y sub 1. And if you're taking a test or a quiz, it's always good to sit there and label your coordinates, just so when you're sitting there doing math, you don't forget which is which. That's a common mistake of students, is they switch them. So let's go ahead and plug it into our point slope formula. So I'll have y, that's part of my formula, minus, right here, my y sub 1 is 2, equals my slope we found out is 1, then in parentheses, my x, that's part of my formula, minus, this minus is part of my formula, and then 3 is what we substitute in. Now we just want to solve it down so it looks like my slope-intercept form, y equals mx plus b. So the first thing I'm going to do is distribute this through, that 1 through. So that's going to give me y minus 2 equals x minus 3. And then I just want to sit there and add that 2 to both sides. So then I'm going to get y equals x -3 plus 2 is going to give me a -1. That's my answer for this one. So that line that I just graphed is a line that is parallel to the given line y equals x plus 5. And notice they have the same slope, 1 and 1. Now let's do 6. For this one, again, we're going to go back to that formula, identify my slope. My slope here is -4. Oops, equals -4. And then my point that I'm going to use is here, okay? So again, we plug it into our formula, y minus 5 equals -4. In parentheses, x minus, and notice how I put in parentheses because we're dealing with a negative sign, so -2. Okay, we have to account for that negative. So if we simplify this through, first I'd sit there and distribute that through. So then I would have y minus 5 equals -4. Negative times a negative gives me a positive, and so that would become x plus 2. All right, so you have to be careful with your signs right here. After that step, we can go ahead and distribute that -4 through to hit every single term. So then I would get y minus 5 equals -4 x minus 8. Sorry, it's right there. All right, then I want to isolate my y so it can be in slope-intercept form. So I add that 5 to both sides. Then I get -4x. I'm adding, so -8 plus that 5, that's going to give me a -3. Notice they have the same slope. So that is a line that is parallel to y equals -4 plus 2. And if I would graph those, they would be running right along each other. So let's do 7. For this one, we're doing the same thing, except this time our y is not isolated. We have to isolate our y so we can see the correct way to our correct slope, right? So I would divide each of my terms by 3. So when I divide each of my terms by 3, I have 2 over 3 x, and then this -3 divided by 3. 3 divided by 3 is just 1. Now I have my slope. Since it's going to be parallel, I have the same slope. That's 2 over 3. And now I can sit there and use my point slope formula to sit there and find the rest. All right. So then I would have y minus 4 using this point right here that they give us equals 2 over 3. In parentheses, my x minus -3. And remember that minus is part of my formula, and I have to account for that -3, right? So then I would have y minus 4 equals 2 over 3 x, because we have to distribute that 2 over 3 through. This turns into a positive. I'll write it right here. So I'm running out of room. So this would turn into a positive because a negative times a negative is a positive. And so when I distribute that through, it's like I'm multiplying the fraction 2 over 3 times the whole number 3. So those 3's will cancel out. I would just get plus 2. I sit there and add that 4 to both sides so I can isolate my y. I get y equals 2 over 3x plus 7, right? And that is the answer for that one. My laptop is going to die. Okay, there you go. Cool. And so now let's do 8. For 8, again, I noticed that it is not in slope-intercept form, which I mean by that, my y is not isolated, so we want to isolate our y, right? The steps to do that, and just so I have enough room. First, we would subtract 9 from both sides, okay? So then I have negative 9x plus 8. My y is still not isolated. It's being multiplied by 3, so I divide all my terms by 3. Then I would get y equals, if I divide this by 3, negative 9 divided by 3, I get 3x. And then plus 3 does not go into 8 evenly, so we'll just keep it as a fraction. Okay. Now, again, I have my slope, and these are parallel, so it's going to have the same slope. So I take my slope, and I take my point that they give me, and I plug it into my y minus y sub 1 equals mx minus x sub 1 formula, my point slope formula. So that would be y minus negative 4. We have to account for that negative 4. Okay. Equals, my slope is negative 3, in parentheses, x minus again, I have to account for that negative 1. Now I simplify from there. A negative times a negative gives me a positive, so I have y plus 4 equals negative 3x. Just because I'm running out of room, we notice that this will become a positive because a negative times a negative, again, is a positive. I'll get rid of that extra parenthesis too when I do this. So this will turn into a positive. And I distribute this through for each. So negative 3x minus 3. Almost there. Now I have to subtract that 4 from both sides. My answer for this one will be y equals negative 3x. Negative 3 minus 4. It's going to be negative 7. All right. And that's the answer for those ones. Make sure you write down those answers because I'm going to have to erase these so I can sit there and do the next one. And again, if you have any questions on, because mostly this is algebra, just put it in the comments and I can answer them if you get stuck on any of them. All right, so now let's go on to number 9. Number 9 says, write the equation of line that is perpendicular, so this is different, of the graph y equals 1/2 x plus 6, and the y-intercept, and they give us our y-intercept of 0, -2. So perpendicular, so remember in math, perpendicular, how we annotate perpendiculars like this, that just means the opposite reciprocal, okay? So what I mean by the opposite is you're going to have a sign change, and reciprocal, I mean you flip your slope, right? So let's go ahead and see what the perpendicular slope of this would be. So my slope right here is 1/2. So I have to do the opposite. So the opposite, because this is positive, is going to be negative. And the reciprocal, when I flip my numerator and denominator, is going to be 2/1, or I can just write it as 2. All right. So that is my slope, my perpendicular slope to this line. And then they give us our y-intercept. Remember, I can only plug in my b if it's a y-intercept. Okay, if not, I'm going to have to sit there and use the y minus y sub 1 m x minus x sub 2 formula, or x sub 1 formula. So I do y equals negative 2 x minus 2, right? And that is a line that is perpendicular to the line that they gave us, right? So let's go on to the next one. Again, write an equation of a line that is perpendicular to the line y equals negative 4x minus 9, and whose y-intercept is 0, 3. They give us our y-intercept, so we can go ahead and just plug it right into our y-intercept form. So perpendicular, let's find our perpendicular slope. And that's going to be negative 4. Again, opposite. I know it's going to be positive. And then I need the reciprocal of 4, right? So I can find the reciprocal by putting 1 over 4. Now that I have my slope and my y-intercept, I can go ahead and write my perpendicular line. My slope of 1 over 4, x plus 3. All right. Cool. So let's go ahead and do number 11. We'll have to sit there and scroll down here because it cut off. All right, so for number 11, it says write the equation of the line that is perpendicular to the graph of 3x minus y equals 5 and has a y-intercept of negative 7. So again, we always want to make sure when they give us a line that it's in y-intercept form. I want my y to be totally isolated, all right? And in the y equals mx plus b form. So let's start by isolating our y. The first step is we're going to subtract 3x from both sides. So I have negative y equals negative 3x plus 5. Sorry, that x looks a little crazy. And then I have to divide. And then I'm going to have to sit there and divide all my terms by negative 1, right? So y equals 3x minus 5. Perfect. Now I can sit there and identify my slope very easily, but remember this is perpendicular, so we're not going to have the same slope. We're going to have the opposite reciprocal slope. So the opposite reciprocal slope of this one, that's a negative 3 right there. Remember, sign change, so it's going to be positive. And then I want the reciprocal of 3, which is 1 over 3. Okay, now I can sit there and write my line. Y equals 1 over 3x minus 7. And that's my line that is perpendicular to this line that was given. Right. Let's go on to 12. 12, write the equation of the line that is perpendicular to the graph 2x plus y equals 5 and whose y-intercept is 4. So they give us our y-intercept, so we're going to do the same thing, except we have to make sure that this line that they gave us is in y equals mx plus b form. We have to solve for y. For this one, it's easy. It's only one step. We sit there and subtract 2x from both sides. So I have 2x plus 5. Right? Now I can see my slope, and remember I want a perpendicular slope. So that's going to be 1 over 2. Remember opposite, positive, reciprocal, 1 over 2. So now I can easily write y equals 1/2 x plus 4. All right. Cool. Let's go on to 13 through 16. Write the slope-intercept form. So again, we want it in y equals mx plus b form of an equation of the line that passes through the given point and is perpendicular to the graph of each equation. So we're doing the same thing as we did above. We're using our slope point form, y minus y sub 1 equals m in parentheses x minus x sub 1. And the one that I wrote above sits there and shows in purple the ones that we're going to substitute in. So if you need to see that again, just rewind the video and see that one that I wrote down. So same logic here, except this time we want a slope that's an opposite reciprocal because we're looking for perpendicular lines. Right? So the slope of this one is going to be 1. So the opposite reciprocal of 1 is just -1. We change the sign. Oops. And make that a little bit neater. We just change the sign, and 1 over 1 is just 1. Okay. Now we have to use this point in the point slope form. So I have y minus my slope of -1. I have to account for that negative. Oh, sorry. Of 2, because that's our y of 2 equals, now we put in the slope -1 x plus 3. Okay. Awesome. Now we just use basic algebra to sit there and simplify this down. I get -x minus 3. Oh, that's a hideous 3, but we can deal with it. And then now I sit there and isolate my y by adding that 2 to both sides. So I have -x minus 1. Okay, perfect. And that is it for that one. So let's go on to the next one. Again, we're going to use point slope form. I'm going to start going a little bit faster so you guys can stay with me, okay? So for this one, again, we want a slope that is perpendicular to -4. The slope that is perpendicular to -4 is 1 over 4. I sit there and have my point, and I have my slope, so I plug it into my formula. Y minus 5 equals 1 over 4. In parentheses, x. And again, we have to account for that -8. 8. Okay. Now I just simplify down by distributing that through. So then I'll have y minus 5 equals 1 over 4. X. Remember, those negatives become a positive, right? And then 8 over 4, that's just going to equal 2. Now I'm going to add my 5 to both sides. I have y equals 1 over 4x plus 7. Okay, and that's the answer for that one. All right, let's do 15 again. So I want to isolate this through. When I isolate that through, or isolate my y, I divide 3 by all my terms. So I get 2 over 3x minus 1. All right, 2 over 3x minus 1. And then now I have my slope and my point, right? So we're looking for a perpendicular slope. So I want the opposite reciprocal. So I do -3 over 2, right? So then I have y minus, I'm using my point, 4 equals -3 over 2. X minus, and then we have to account for that other minus, but just because I'm running out of space, a negative plus negative, or negative times negative, it's a positive 6. I distribute that through, so now I get y minus 4 equals negative 3 over 2 x, and this is kind of like multiplying fractions. 6 over 1, you can look at it as that. So 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18. So 3 times 6 is 18. So I get 18 over 2. That's going to be minus 9. Okay. And then I can go ahead and add that 4 to both sides. If y equals negative 3 over 2x and then minus 5. Okay. That's the answer for that one. I'm going to leave 16 for you guys to try, or you can put down in the comments if you want me to try to do so or show you the answers, but I want to get through 17 and 20. I'll do 17 and 18. Let's do these ones. All right, so these ones, it's graph the following lines and determine if they are parallel, perpendicular, coincide. So coincide means that they all share the same points. So that means the graphs are literally like on top of each other, or they're the same graphs. That's what that means. Or intersecting, all right? So let's start with 17. This one will be easier to graph. Remember, when you're graphing linear equations, you first want to sit there and note down your slope. For this first one right here, I'll put this one. My slope is going to be 3. And I'm going to put 3 over 1 because remember, we can do rise over run to sit there and graph it, okay? And then I want my y-intercept, which is 0, 2. So I graph that, 0, 1, 2. And I'll just put that here, 0, 2. All right, and now we start from our y-intercept and we go up, because remember, rise over run, so up 3 to the right 2. So up 3, 1, 2, 3, to the right 1, to the right 1. And we can do the opposite way too if we run out of room right here. So then I would go down 3, 1, 2, 3, and then to the left 1. And then 1, 2, 3 to the left 1. Usually they would like you to sit there and graph about 3 points for a line, so you can really see the pattern of it. So that's line 1. So now to graph line 2, it's easiest to graph when my y is isolated and it's in y equals mx plus b form. So that's what we have to do first, is isolate our y. So to isolate our y, I would subtract 9x from both sides. So then you get negative 3y equals minus 9x. Minus 6. And then I would divide all my terms by negative 3, right? So negative 9 divided by negative 3, that's going to give me positive 3x. Negative 6 divided by negative 3, that's going to give me positive 2. Right? Now that I have it in y equals mx plus b form, I can easily identify my slope. Again, I want to write my slope as rise over run. So that's 3 over 1. And then my y or xy coordinate, 0, 2, or y-intercept. Right? So now I can sit there and plot 0, 0, 2. And then from there, I go up 3, 1, 2, 3 to the right 1. And I can go in the opposite way too. 1, 2, 3 to the left 1. Notice that I'm hitting all my points. 1, 2, 3 to the left 1 as our first line. So since they share the same points and they're basically the same line, then this one's going to be coincide. And I'll put a C for coincide. Coincide. Okay, let's do this last one. For this one, again, it's in y equals mx plus b form, so it's super easy to graph when it's in that form. My slope is -2, so -2. I'm going to put that over 1 so I can do my rise over run. And then my y-intercept is 0, 3. Right, so I have 0, 1, 2, 3. And I start from here and do my rise over run. So this time I have a negative. When usually I have a negative with the fraction, I like my negative to either belong to my numerator or my denominator. It doesn't really belong to both, okay? So this one I have it belonging to my numerator. So that means that I'm going to go down to 1, 2, and then to the right 1. And I do that same thing, down 2, 1, 2 to the right 1. Same thing, down 2, 1, 2 to the right 1. Okay. And that's my line here. It's not the prettiest line, but it's a line. Oops, sorry. All right. Like that. All right. And then we sit there and have to make our second line, this line right here. So again, we have to sit there and isolate our y. Let's isolate our y. I have -4y. Equals, I sit there and subtract that 2x from both sides. And then plus 8. Now I want to sit there and divide everything by that -4. So then I would get y equals negative divided by a negative is a positive. 2 over 4, that reduces down to 1/2 x. 8 divided by -4, that's going to be -2. Right? Now I can easily identify my slope and my y-intercept. So my y-intercept for this one is -2. 0, 1, 2, -2. And then my slope is going to be rise 1, run 2. So rise 1 over 2, 1, 2. Rise 1 over 2, 1, 2. Rise 1 over 2. Remember, if we want to go the opposite way, I can go down 1 to the left 2. Okay. And that makes that line. Now, one thing I can notice right off the bat are my slopes. My slope for my first one was -2. My slope for my new one is +1 over 2. These are opposite reciprocals. Remember, when we have opposite reciprocal slopes, that means they are perpendicular. And we can put in that 90-degree angle to annotate perpendicular. All right. Because perpendicular are when two lines cross at a 90-degree angle. Right. So there were two more down here, 19 and 20. If you want help with 19 and 20, write down in the comments and I can sit there and give you the answers for them or show you the work by replying back. All right. And yeah, if you have any homework questions or have any further tutoring needs, please subscribe or leave a message in the comments section. And thank you for watching. Bye.